Internet, hello you lovelies. Let's talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Now there are three things that I think would really elevate this film from the mid to low category of Marvel that it currently sits for me to one of the upper Marvel films, and I do think that people should still see this movie. This is going to be a spoiler review. Please do not watch this unless you've already seen the film. I was a lot fluffier, joyous, lighter with the non-spoiler review because I do genuinely want people to see this film. Those first two acts are a great time, and I really want people to experience that and not be turned off by the Rotten Tomatoes score, not be turned off by the third act like I was at the cost of missing the film. It is a good time. But this review, as I said, is going to be spoilery. I usually drop these on Monday, but I am trying to grow this channel, and I feel like spoilers are out from the day there's a press screening, much less by Thursday or Friday. So I'm dropping this a bit earlier so folks that saw last night's screenings or anything today can come back to it. But there will be spoilers. Please leave if you haven't seen the movie. That is your last warning of spoilers. And like I said, I'm trying to grow this channel, so please like, subscribe, hit all those buttons on YouTube, and share this video with your friends, especially if you like these three ideas. All right, let's get to it. The three things I think would fix Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and then a few little bonus. One is literally a single line of dialogue. This is a one line of dialogue fix for a huge problem I had. So the ants take out Kang, right? Like that's what they do. Even for a moment, they distract him. He still has to come back and fight. Kang should not be thwarted by ants, especially if he's going to be the big Phase 5 villain. But there are many Kangs. So instead of making this the crazy Kang, one line fixes that problem. When you get the post-credit scene, one of those Kangs could have merely said, "And we exiled our weakest Kang for his weakness, for his insolence, for his punity." You could have literally acknowledged that the guy that almost took out Ant-Man, the guy that we fought with this whole movie, was the smallest, was the most insignificant. It would have made more fear. It would have made more terror with the next iteration we get, like we had with He Who Remains. It would have allowed for the Phase 5 big bad to be a lot more of a threat, a looming ominous threat. It would have solved a lot of the silly problems of having a depowered Kang feel like he could barely fight Ant-Man. There's so many things it solved, and it works for a lot of the times Kang was like using henchmen and basically like building a force field. He wasn't doing Kang things. It would have fixed a lot of problems with a single line of dialogue. We banished the weakest Kang for being weak. It solves a lot because I love Jonathan Majors' performance. I think Jonathan Majors delivered the gravitas of Kang. He was Kang. But the writing and the plotting didn't allow for him to be Kang because it's in an Ant-Man film. It's not an Avengers film. So you make the weakest one. That way it's so much more of a looming threat, and then Jonathan Majors still gets that praise, which he deserves for an incredible performance. And it allows a different scope of what's to come than just like a lot of frat boys chanting at the end. It just, that one line would have changed everything for me because I feel like Majors gets Kang. But the script, plotting, not dialogue. Dialogue was fun, but plotting didn't allow him to be the Kang that I think he can be and will be in future films. Number two, time in relation to Kang. Kang never wielded time. Now, I know he didn't have his full powers, and I know the multiverse engine was broken. They were very clear to stress the multiverse engine was broken. But with that suit and with his powers, there still could have been some use of time. They could have made a rule where it was like within eyesight, within contact, within whatever. There could have been things. If he could open up little mind portals and do all those things, and if he had this control over something to build this civilization, they could have made that through his ability to manipulate time. And then all of the dialogue about Scott missing time with his daughter, which again, I really thought they were going to lean into more than just the opening and the end, to build that family relationship, to make the daughter-father connection in the film stronger. He could have threatened Cassie by aging her in that prison scene. Why wasn't it? It would have been so terrifying to see him torture Scott by basically making her age in front of him, by aging her up rapidly, or vice versa, by aging up Scott, by removing the one thing Scott wants more of. The entire point of this is that Scott missed time with his daughter. And this is a movie about time, and we wasted time elements. So aging up Cassie, aging down, instead of like squeezing through TK, through like the suits, whatever, have them brittle with age and then resume them. And also, he could have blackmailed Scott, not with like, I'll give you your daughter back, but I will give you those 5 years back. He was the only Avenger to not have gotten that time with his family in that direction. Hawkeye lost his family to them getting dusted, and he was trapped in regular Earth. Scott's the only one that he got trapped and missed out on his kids growing up. So that's a very unique opportunity for the only dad Avenger of Phase 3 that was the one trapped to then be offered it back, even if it was gaining those memories. If he puts him back right before, the butterfly effect would be a different thing because of how time works in the MCU. You could literally have Kang offered Scott that time as a reward for doing it. So in addition to him offering Janet, I won't touch your planet, he could have said, you won't touch your planet, I'll give you that time with your kid back. Blackmail would have been much more interesting. It would have allowed for a lot more of a psychological dissection of what Scott's decision making was, and it would have tied much more deeply into the themes you're dealing with the Ant-Man family. And 3, this is a movie about a conqueror of time. This is a movie where, very uniquely, the only Avenger that uses time in a way that isn't to time travel, but affects time, is Ant-Man. From the day they announced that Kang was going to be an Ant-Man, I was like, well, that is a singular thing they can do, and then they never do it. Think about the film. There are lines about the trauma of time lost. The movie opens with her being in jail, which is serving time. The entire concept of Kang is that he's lost time. There's so much about time, and guess who has relative time? All of the Antmen. Time is relative when he grows, when he shrinks. Time is relative for him, for Hope, for Cassie, and they're the only ones. So Kang, being a wielder of time, maybe wouldn't be able to handle their relativity of time. It didn't make sense the amount of telekinesis used, and yes, I know Kang has other powers, and yes, I know he has telekinesis, but imagine if time was the thing that he was wielding, and the only people he couldn't thwart, because he'd already killed Thor, he'd already killed other Avengers, he'd already done all these things, was Ant-Man, because of the relativity of time. So I would have had him grow and shrink, and them unite as a family, which is something that Cassie wanted, which tied a lot into the other concepts of the film to take out Kang. Instead of just growing and shrinking and throwing punches, let the relativity of time to them affect Kang's perception. That would have also solved the problem of the quantum realm being a new space, so then when they were big, it didn't look big because we don't know the quantum realm. When Cassie and Ant-Man, when Scott and Cassie hugged and they were like, you are so big, that's relative to them. We didn't have it on Earth. The cool thing about Ant-Man is you get to see usual places unusually because of Ant-Man. But we were in an unusual place, so the size relativity, again, time and size relativity, didn't work. So if you had things be moving fast and slow, like in Civil War when he felt like he was moving very slow, that would be a way to throw off Kang's sense of time and might throw him off enough to take him out instead of having him taken out by ants. I will come back to the Michael Douglas ant thing, but for now, letting the relativity of time between Hope, Scott, and Cassie, and them uniting as a family, making that about something that could throw off Kang, could have been an incredible way to tell this story. Also, as a bonus, if you wanted to, MODOK could have teamed up with them to use Kang's technology against him. Maybe the relativity just distracted him, threw him off balance, and then on top of that, MODOK's tech, since clearly he was designed by Kang, his hands were the same color, he was pieces of Kang's tech, you could have had MODOK then turn as he did in the film and then still get that great Avengers line, but help them using powers, maybe Pym particles plus MODOK tech, take out Kang. There was an option there, and I wish it had been used differently than just a ramming thing. Also, speaking of the relativity of time in the quantum realm, when she shrunk down and then got bigger for the first time, and when Scott shrunk down and got bigger, they're still small. They're still like microscopic. They're like the size of atoms and quarks. So if they're bigger to that environment, they're still itsy bitsy tiny. So why would the citrus thing come to play? And also he was able to stay big for a long time because he wasn't oversized. He was just bigger micro-sized. It really, the in-world logic breaking there was vexing. All right, now just a couple little things that I do just because they'd be fun and I think they'd be, enhance the film. David Dastmalchan, I would have put him in the book reading. I would have had him reading in very broken Russian. Maybe even like the chapter after, like he picks up the book when he takes the phone call, like why is prison calling, David Dastmalchan takes over. Would have loved to have seen the gang. Louis recounting those 5 years to Scott. We basically get a play-by-play of anything they want to talk about in the MCU. You can do all of the MCU shows that if people only watch the movies, they get a recap from Louis to Scott of what's been going on in the world. That was a missed opportunity, not having Michael Pena do a big 5-year recap while Marvel's the busiest it's ever been. It's right there. And then you have the family back on Earth, his family, like his thief family. That's going to ground you to the franchise way more. Ant-Man is one of the most unique franchises in that those characters stay pretty much right there. They're not in Avengers films. His little universe, I think needed that to ground us in the Peyton trilogy, because Peyton got to finish his trilogy. I would have loved to have seen those characters, and that might have tied it in better for, again, the scope and scale because of unusual places. It would have been nice to see a little of that in the regular Earth before the quantum realm. Also, speaking of the time they were on the Earth, it was really weird that he opened the movie by a narration of him reading from the book, and then at the end it was just him talking in his head, but there was no like tone change. It was just an odd bookend to a thing. I did like that ominous dread, and I wish there was more of that in the movie, but it did feel odd to bookend basically VO versus reading as the same inner voice. It just felt like a narrative thing. And another thing I really think would have been really special is, and this is a team up with Winston Marshall's idea that I'm extrapolating on. Me and Winston do the show called Capes and Cowls. He's great. Basically, he said that Hank should have been on his own adventure, like a C-plot. That way, basically, Janet and Hope have their team up. We could see the mother-daughter struggle. I think that would have paralleled Paul Rudd with his daughter nicely. We could have seen a lot more of Wasp, both of them. But then on top of that, what I would have done is, yeah, the Hank adventures would be fun because he's out there looking for ants, having his own thing. And I loved the moment, even though the moment with the ants taking over Kang, I didn't love because it was towards Kang, but I love that visual of Ant-Man getting his Ant-Man moment, the Michael Douglas Ant-Man moment. I would have ended the film with Hank and Janet trapped in the quantum realm. Hope and Scott get out with Cassie, but those two are trapped in the quantum realm. You see them walking towards the civilization. You've got Bill Murray taken out. You've got them maybe going to rebuild the civilization with people. They're getting to retire effectively. They're going off on their own. But then the title comes up over, and it's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And it's Ant-Man over Hank Pym, Michael Douglas, and the Wasp over Janet Van Dyne, Michelle Pfieffer. Quantumania, they're trapped in the quantum realm. So the first film is Ant-Man, Scott Lang, Paul Rudd. The second film, Ant-Man and the Wasp. It is Hope as Wasp and Scott is Ant-Man. It's beautiful. It brings it all together. It ups the stakes, and the title gets fun because the third one, the title plays with that by going Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and it's about the original Ant-Man, Hank Pym, and the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne. It's right there, and it would have been beautiful. Them staying in the quantum realm, and then that title would have enhanced everything for me quite a bit. But alas, those are just some of the changes I would have made that I think would have enhanced the film. Again, I think this movie was fun. I think this movie had a lot going for it in character design. I think the creature work was incredible. I think the creativity at play here is the big reason I want people to see it. I think creativity is hard to find, and I think there's so much at play here, and I really think the first two acts sung for me. The balance of comedy and drama really worked for me. Jonathan Majors' performance as Kang really worked for me. It was so intimidating, like Jaws. Like, he was the shark for the first act, and then he came in, and he was just as menacing, and he cut in and out of the frame. I loved the foreboding setup for Kang, and then he delivered. The moment he yelled, "I am Kang," was so powerful. He's also mastered this beautiful art of what shouldn't work with really big choices, but he's so natural and so grounded, it grounds the work. Like, he's basically doing such big takes of these different Kangs, and he's like basically doing like theater performance exercises. Like, he's doing like, play it this way, and then nailing it, and play it this, and nailing it. But he's so in it, and he's so real that he's able to do so much, so beautifully, so well. So that really worked for me. Like, every post-credit scene, his delivery, I think with a lesser thing, wouldn't have worked. The visuals had an SNL skit flavor that I didn't love, but his gravitas was there the whole time, which is nigh impossible, even with the following post-credit scene, which was very dramatic reading, but it was of the time. It worked. Jonathan Majors was incredible. Paul Rudd is Charm Incarnate. I really like our new Cassie Lang. I thought Michelle Pfieffer was such an MVP of this. I thought getting David Dastmalchan in a new role was delightful. I loved that character so very much. I love the dude from The Good Place's character, and his delivery was wonderful. Would have loved to see a little bit more of him. But overall, the first two acts absolutely work. Overall, the adventure, the wonder, the tales to astonish flavor straight from the comic books. The MVP of the movie for me, besides Kang, was MODOK. I think Corey Stoll getting some redemption is amazing. I think the line about the Avengers was just fucking hilarious. I think Don't Be a Dick was beyond funny in a moment I really needed. All of that really worked. This movie works for two acts. That third act change, it'd be in the top half of my MCU. But with the third act undermining Kang, with the third act undermining our big bad for Phase 5, with the third act basically having Ant-Man take out Kang in a fist fight, after, variables. But, like, it's also, like, why not have Ant-Man shrink Kang down to a size where time relativity, which is the reason, remember, they said in the quantum realm he has no power, time and space, relativity, why not shrink him down to an impossible size, again, with MODOK tech? So instead of, like, falling into the machine, there were so many tropes in the third act. Freedom fighters taking on a city and a bunch of mindless drones. Him falling into a thing and getting absorbed just like Red Skull. So many things, just a tweak away, could have been immaculate. So for me, it was on the lower tier of Marvel, but with a couple change, could have been on a higher tier. So I wanted to make a different kind of spoiler review with some tweaks I would have made. Hope you enjoyed this. If you want more like this was fun. Instead of just a review of like, I liked, didn't like. These are the things I changed. Overall, liked 2/3. Third was rough enough that it lowered the whole film. But if you liked this type of review, please do let me know in the comments. And again, I hope you didn't watch this until you'd seen the film, because I warned you many times it was a spoiler thing. And speaking of spoilers, don't be a dick. If people haven't seen stuff, don't be a dick. I made this very clear in this video, but like, don't share shit on Twitter, and don't be like, I don't know. Internet culture scares the fuck out of me. People are getting worse. But I love you very much for watching this all the way into however long this is, and I love you very much for supporting fucking art. And I got in a lot of yelling matches about what art is in the movies, because apparently if it's made by a big company, it can't be art. That's bullshit. A lot of incredible artists made this film, both visual effect, practical, acting, directing, set building. Those are fucking artists. Respect them. And that is going to do it, you lovelies. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please like, subscribe, follow, all the things. Much love. I'll see you soon. Go watch Ant-Man. Well, hopefully you've seen it by now. Go watch whatever you want. Support art. Go to the movies. Fucking support movie theaters. All right. Bye, guys.